Craft cocktails, from the classics to zero-proof drinks, are all around us. But what if we told you that craft cocktails are actually a relatively recent addition to the culinary scene? My name is Toni Tipton-Martin, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Cook's Country at America's Test Kitchen. I want to introduce you to a podcast mini-series I'm hosting called 100 Proof, The Journey of the American Cocktail. Over 6 episodes, we'll look at how mixed drinks offer us a window into what was happening in America during the dawn of the cocktail. We'll then take you to the present day to contemplate what forces led to our modern cocktail renaissance. And along the way, we'll of course be sharing cocktail recipes with you. Subscribe to Proof from America's Test Kitchen so you won't miss the first episode. It drops on Thursday, May 23rd. Again, that's Proof, Proof, from America's Test Kitchen. Cheers.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Frankly, I have never heard anything formally about MSG.
I use MSG occasionally.
What I have heard about MSG is it can cause headaches.
I limit MSG because it's been used in brain studies to trigger excitotoxicity.
For me as a chef, I like it as a tool.
MSG is delicious. I think it's naturally occurring in a lot of foods, like tomatoes,
as much as possible. I try to buy
It's not that complicated.
Pineapple on pizza, blue cheese, or ranch. New York versus deep dish. The gastronomic world has more than its fair share of timeless debates. But what about the truths we've accepted? The archaic kitchen knowledge we continue to carry? Do you believe in a food myth?
What you heard just now were ordinary folks' thoughts on a controversial subject, MSG. It's one of those hot-button topics in food ripe with misinformation. On this episode of Meat and Three, we're here to change some minds.
4 of our particularly opinionated reporters will be coming to the stage, ready to set the record straight on a culinary myth of their choice.
Oh, and of course, I, H. Conley, along with my co-host, Taylor Early,
hey,
will be your MCs for this evening.
So welcome, listeners, to the one,
the only,
Meat and Three Debunk-isode.
Meat and Three.
Meat and Three.
Meat and Three.
One meat, 3 sides.
Food, news, and storytelling.
A square meal. For your ears.
Meat and Three.
First up to the stage, we have our resident sushi chef, Addison Austin Liu, here to debunk your fishy misconceptions.
When I was told I would be given a soapbox to rant about sushi myths for this episode, I was elated. I've been working behind a sushi bar for almost a decade. I'm a woman in a woman-owned Japanese restaurant. That alone spits in the face of the misogynistic myth that women shouldn't be sushi chefs. My boss is this incredible woman, Chef Peggy Ince-Whiting, who has been in the industry for over 40 years and trained under a master in Tokyo. She's taught me everything I know and is a master in her own right. I decided, instead of ranting all by myself, I'd go to an expert, her. So grab your chopsticks. Let's get into it.
Sushi myths. There are many of them. I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions around many facets of this. The first question that I had was, do you have to use chopsticks for sushi?
No, and traditionally, sushi is a finger food. So even to the point that my sushi master spent a whole day showing the proper way to hold sushi. So you hold the rice with your thumb and your middle finger, and then the fish with your index finger, so that you feel the warmth of the rice and the cold of the fish. And then dip the fish side in soy sauce and eat it. However, sashimi is eaten with chopsticks.
We have people come into the bar and ask for something that's fresh. And I think there's a certain romanticized idea about fish being yanked straight out of the ocean and landing on your plate.
But then let's also clarify. There's certain fish, like hamachi, has to have been frozen. I have to have a letter that this has been frozen for 7 days.
Soapbox Addison here. Just a little clarification. There's no black or white to this whole fresh or frozen thing. What Peggy-san is explaining here is that sometimes the sushi gods demand sacrifice. Kidding. But truly, there are certain regulations, dependent upon species or region, that require a fish to be frozen to kill potentially harmful bacteria. Some fish come to us already frozen. With paperwork we can show the powers that be, we've done our due diligence. Now, let's get back to the myth-busting.
But I purchase it already there. That is as fresh as it should be offered.
Right.
But it's freshly defrosted. We get the fresh Suzuki-en. We get the fresh Aji-en. There's plenty of crossover that we do use fresh. But there's also plenty of like, nope, that needs to be frozen.
Well, it's a globalized industry at this point. Japan is ordering from California. California is ordering from Japan.
I'm a Delta hub. It gets here in 2 hours and I pick it up at Delta Air Cargo.
Yep.
It's an hour and a half plane ride instead of stuck in a traffic jam in LA. Who's getting the better product? Yes, we're landlocked and yes, we're in the middle of a desert, but that doesn't mean it's not good fish.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm being facetious with this one. Can women be sushi chefs?
Well, I would hope.
At this point, you're like, well,
I was told plenty that I shouldn't be.
Right. And like, what's the basis for that?
They truly, honestly believe that women's hands are 3 degrees warmer and that affects the taste of the fish and that our hands aren't strong enough to form the rice properly. And they're not sure about a woman's temperament behind the sushi bar. And I'm sorry, but I do swear like a sailor. And you know what I mean? I've been in the kitchen for 45 years. Yeah. That's what it is. Yeah. But, I joked with them in Japan that I'm from Utah, so my hands are colder.
Yeah, you live in the mountains.
And I'm 6 foot tall.
Yeah. I
tower over you. How can you say I'm not strong as you? I know that when I worked there were 5 Japanese women and myself. There were 6 women.
All right. Speaking of women, and this is obviously kind of an interesting one because we cannot make medical statements, but eating sushi while pregnant. I actually had a woman, I don't know if I told you, last month who came in very, very pregnant. I made her a roll. And, she told me, she was like, I did research, I chatted with my doctor and decided that like I was going to make the choice for myself to eat sushi while I was pregnant. Then I asked her if she wanted another roll and she paused and was like, hold on, I can't tell if I'm full or if I'm having another contraction. And I was like, do I need to call an ambulance? She's like, no, we just came from the doctor and I wanted sushi to be the last thing I ate before I gave birth to this baby.
I was like, okay.
And I was like, get it, mama.
Well, mothers in Japan, women in Japan eat sushi the whole time they're pregnant. The doctors here have always been, you don't ever introduce something new to your body when you're pregnant. Yeah. So if you've always eaten sushi then it's not new things for your body to digest.
Make informed decisions. Did you eat sushi while you were pregnant?
I did with my first. I needed a chirashi bowl every night. My craving was fish.
Yeah.
And you look at him, the brain on that kid is like, I'm going to testify that fish oils are a thing.
Yeah.
I'd say one of the biggest things we've learned, aside from the fact that women can indeed be sushi chefs, is that there's nuance to all of this. It's about doing your research, making informed decisions, and when in doubt, ask your chef. One of the most important lessons from my time behind bar is to honor tradition, but also leave the door open for future learning. Immense gratitude to Peggy-san for taking the time to chat with me. And if you happen to be in Salt Lake City, come sit at our bar. Kanpai!
Thank you, Addison. I know how I'm going to hold my sushi from now on.
Up next, we have a young man raised in the dark underbelly of Flavortown.
He's the Sultan of Sprinkling, the Duke of Deliciousness, the Emperor of Umami. Please welcome to the stage Sam Gerardi, the MSG Warrior!
If you've been roaming this earth for a while, you may have heard of this fine white powder called MSG. It's a controversial ingredient in the US despite the fact that it's ubiquitous in our food. So, what is MSG?
MSG is known as monosodium glutamate. and it's actually a flavor enhancer that gives foods a savory taste, something that we commonly know as umami.
That's Dr. Debbie Fetter, a nutritional biologist and professor at UC Davis. The current nutritional consensus on MSG is that it falls under the GRAS, or generally recognized as safe, criteria of the FDA. Now, that sounds pretty ominous, but
there needs to be a substantial amount of research and expert review before that ingredient or additive is deemed safe for human consumption under its intended use.
Examples of GRAS additives include pea protein and sodium citrate, the stuff that makes silky smooth cheese sauce. Decades of private and public research has concluded the following. MSG, when consumed with food and in quantities similar to what we receive in our diet, does not have replicable negative effects. While small populations report negative reactions to MSG, to date there's been no conclusive link established. So, if there's solid scientific consensus on MSG, where does America's monosodium fear come from?
Some of the controversy starts if we go back to the 1960s, where there was a letter to the editor written in the New England Journal of Medicine.
This letter, written by Dr. Ho-Man Kwok, spoke of what would become known as Chinese restaurant syndrome. He complained of numbness, general weakness, and heart palpitations after eating northern Chinese food. This letter arrived at a time of high anti-authority sentiment. Silent Spring was recently released, exposing the consequences of rampant pesticide use. Artificial sweeteners were under public scrutiny. Sprinkle in rampant xenophobia and anti-Asian sentiment, and you have a recipe for public outcry.
I think that in the United States, often people are looking for some type of food villain or something to blame for the cause of certain problems, when in actuality, we don't eat food in terms of single ingredients. It's always a mix of different ingredients, and sometimes food can trigger some upset due to a multitude of reasons. And I think with MSG is the perfect target to blame.
It's been a couple years since the 60s. A lot of the MSG hysteria has died down. I wanted to get the pulse of the public. What do people think of MSG now?
It has been really interesting to talk to everyone about MSG, and there's just been such a diverse amount of responses.
That's my co-reporter, Lo-An Nguyen, fellow MSG warrior and the Julia Child Fellow of HRN. We talked with a lot of people about MSG, and generally, the sentiment's positive. However, a sizable number of people had qualms.
The main critique that I've heard of using MSG is that it can cause health issues or headaches.
It's not just like non-Asians thinking this way. It's folks within the community. Like I heard a friend's, her mom still cooks and shares food with her. And she's like, no, you don't use MSG because it'll cause your hair to fall out. And I don't know where that information came from.
Many Americans really only encounter MSG on labels, often for junk food. Because let's face it, many companies use MSG to make bad food taste great. Combine that with internet misinformation, and it's pretty easy to see how distrust continues to brew. But to dismiss MSG as Dorito dust is a missed opportunity.
Most of the time, we just use fish sauce and soy sauce, but if the dish is a bit delicate, like a clean soup and stuff, we just add a little bit of MSG so it doesn't really overpower the taste.
Many of the MSG fans we interviewed echoed this. It's a way of adding gentle umami, bringing muted flavors into full color, and all it takes is a pinch. For many in the Asian American community, though, MSG is more than just an ingredient.
It's a foundation for me to tell stories to.
It ties in culture, cooking practices, and palettes and flavors that we're used to, like food memories.
Food is so tied in identity and culture that when we start kind of like telling people that what they've created or what their diet is bad, that kind of has to make you think, why?
At the end of the day, as much as I love MSG, if you feel like you're sensitive, you don't have to eat it. Like, I'm not going to go on here and say, please consume your allotted 0.5 gram per day.
Yeah, there's no MSG shaming here.
But if you're ready for an all-expenses-paid trip to Flavor Town, grab a bag, mess around.
Try sprinkling it on your fried rice like you, Sam, or making a sauce with it.
Make Bonnie's famous MSG martini.
Try cooking with it, like have a relationship with it first.
This has been the MSG Warrior, signing off.
We'll be right back with more Meat and Three after a brief break. Stay tuned for our next Snack Down.
Welcome back to the Meat and Three Debunk-isode. Up next is Hannah Chouinard with an ode to Wisconsin's classiest cocktail.
Cocktail snobs better be ready to get off their high horse. This Wisconsinite is here to put you in your place. Hannah, give him the works.
Growing up in Wisconsin, I'd learned to think of cocktails as unpretentious things. As a teen, they were Everclear and grape soda in my cousin's backyard. Years later, they transformed into gin and tonics in sticky college bars. And then, as a young adult exploring alcohol legally for the first time, they became a Midwestern staple. Brandy old fashions, complete with muddled fruit and 7-Up. I remember the first time I learned that an old fashioned was something else to other people. Working at an oyster bar in central Wisconsin, I followed up an order with the perennial question: how would you like it? Brandy, whiskey, sour, sweet soda, and for the garnish, cherries, or maybe olives. How would you like it? The guest who ordered the drink looked at me, puzzled. Their face screwed up into a confused frown. How would I like it? An old-fashioned, they educated me, a real old-fashioned, was a splash of sugar and bitters in whiskey. Fruit didn't belong anywhere near the glass, God forbid a soda gun. They would never deign to drink the ungodly monstrosity I knew. In their eyes, an old-fashioned was a holy thing, perfect in its simplicity. For many people, what they choose to order at the bar is a message. To them, our drink of choice can say a lot about us. I can still see the modern, professional woman plucking the olives out of her third bone-dry martini, barely holding it together as she makes eyes at the bartender. Or the mid-pledge frat bro sliding his Cosmo back to me because his ego can't handle being seen drinking from a stemmed glass. In New York, I've learned, an old-fashioned is a serious thing. It's for the surly, the gruff, the solemn but upscale. It's clean but tough, and every sip reminds you that you're drinking in a way that makes you feel brave and strong. In the last few years, I've come to enjoy what I call the East Coast old-fashioned. But that's not how I've known it. For me, an old-fashioned is a cube of sugar muddled with candy-sweet cherries and oranges. It's a dash of bitters topped with brandy and sour citrus soda. It's a dive bar in a tray of stale popcorn. It's a shot of Genovka and the crack of a cue ball. For me, an old-fashioned is home, perfect in its simplicity.
Wow, thank you, Hannah. I never thought I'd be getting emotional over maraschino cherries, but here we are.
Me either. Last but not least, we have our final reporter of the night. Elizabeth Fisher is tired of the elitism that keeps people afraid of trying different wines.
She's sick of the pretentiousness that keeps others from asking, "What is that?" which is the question most people ask when they see their first bottle of orange wine.
She's ready to welcome you to the world of skin contact wines with open arms, over a glass, with a friend. Elizabeth, tear down this wall.
And pop that bottle.
Because it's like no matter what you're tasting it. Like someone else's taste buds on the same wine is going to be like totally different. Yeah. So like you're going to pick up one thing, another person is going to pick up another. Neither of you are wrong.
Here's what I'm not about to do. Spew condescension. Wine snobbery is real. Grape knowledge gatekeeping is a thing. But when it comes to wine, I would like to normalize that there is no such thing as a stupid question. I'm no wine expert, but I work in restaurants and serve a lot of wine to a lot of people. The most common questions I get when taking an order is, what does skin contact mean? What is orange wine? Is it made with oranges? Lucky for me, these are my favorite questions to answer. So let's drink some wine and debunk together. Skin contact is another term for maceration, which is the period of the winemaking process when the grape skins remain in contact with the juice. Maceration extracts color, flavors, and tannins from the skins. Tannins are a group of bitter chemical compounds found in foods and nature. When managed well, tannins astringency can result in a magical stroke of flavor. White wines are made by pressing white wine grapes and only fermenting the juice, no skin involved. Now, red wines are inherently skin contact. They're made by fermenting red wine grapes with their skins. But when you see the term skin contact, it usually refers to wines made from white wine grapes, where the skins hang out with the juice for a period of fermentation. With just a kiss of skin, the wine turns a sunset hue. That's why it's called orange wine, or amber wine, or ramato, which means copper in Italian.
The color reminds me of like a peach candy. Like it's electric.
I feel like I'm going swimming in the ocean, but it was orange.
Like if we were in the ocean on Mars.
If orange wine hasn't reached you yet, hide your kids, hide your wives, and hide your wine glasses. The incoming is inevitable, and it will be all-consuming. But the trend is far from new. The technique dates back 5,000 years to Georgia, its country of origin. Orange wines have a huge spectrum of flavor because any white grape varietal can be used. The length of time the skin touches the juice, as well as other techniques utilized by the winemaker, will also affect the taste and mouthfeel. Common aromas are stone fruit, pineapple, orange blossom, and honey, but they can also have a salty note and are often described as funky. What are you getting? What kind of notes?
I mean, like, it's funky.
Because of their diversity and boldness of flavor, orange wines can hold up to both beef and fish and complement foods that are often tricky to pair with wine, like Indian curries or Korean kimchi. For me, I usually pair a glass of orange wine with a second glass, and I like to pair the second glass with a third.
That's our show. Thanks for listening. For more debunking, check out our show notes.
This episode of Meat and Three was reported by Addison Austin Liu, Sam Gerardi, Luan Nguyen, Hannah Chouinard, and Elizabeth Fisher. Our lead producer on this episode was Sam Gerardi, with support from Sophia Hooper.
Meat and Three is produced by me, H. Conley.
And me, Taylor Early.
Our audio engineer for this episode is Armen Spendjian, and our theme song was composed by Breakmaster Cylinder.
This program is supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council.
Meat and Three is powered by Simplecast.
Meat and Three is a production of Heritage Radio Network, the world's pioneer food radio station. Learn more at heritageradionetwork.org and follow us at heritage_radio. And please stay in touch. Whether you have a story idea, a debunking, or would just like to say hey, write us at ideas@meatand3.nyc, and that's all spelled out. Hi, listeners. We want to tell you about a podcast we're really digging. It's called Christopher Kimball's Milk Street Radio. Every week, they travel the world to find the most fascinating stories about food, including children who harvest cod tongues after school in Norway and a detective who tracks down food thieves. And on Milk Street Radio, you can always find the unexpected. The comedian who ranks apples using an elaborate 100-point system, the secret history of grocery stores, and how to eat your way through Italy. They also interview the most beloved names in food like Jacques Pepin, Sola Aweli, Jose Andres, Jet Tila, Ina Garten, Nigella Lawson, and Padma Lakshmi. Plus, co-hosts Christopher Kimball and Sarah Moulton do live calls with listeners and answer their questions about ingredients, techniques, and culinary mysteries. Like, why roasting a leg of lamb made one color's oven explode? Ever wonder why your bread won't rise or your souffle falls flat? Chris and Sarah have the answers. You'll also hear from a rotating cast of contributors, including Kenji Lopez-Alt, Cheryl Day, Dan Pashman from The Sporkful, and Alex Ainuz, a French guy cooking from YouTube. Take a listen at 177milkstreet.com/radio or just search your podcast app for Milk Street Radio.